welcome to the Rosecolored Path podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I have a very special guest here today. I have Vera Morris, and she is the current US of A Miss North Carolina. Hi, Vera.
Hi, Candace. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to hear about your journey as Miss North Carolina, and it's US of A Miss North Carolina, correct?
United States of America. Yep, or USOA.
Okay.
Miss North Carolina.
And so tell me about why you entered this pageant, what you hope to do.
Well, let's see. I had just done a pageant back in August. And so I said, you know what? I'm not quite done yet. I really want to continue competing if I can, to continue to talk about my platform, which is breast cancer awareness. And I happen to be scrolling through Facebook. You know how that goes. Yes. And I came across the United States of America's pageants. I went to the website and I just loved it because it was very inclusive to all women, and it had a Ms. division. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. So after talking to the national director, I was super, super excited and had the opportunity to be appointed this title September 1st. So I'm very, very excited.
Congratulations. And I've actually looked at that system, and she does run an amazing program. So
Absolutely.
You are the perfect ambassador to represent Miss North Carolina.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I want to understand how you got into the breast cancer awareness as your passion and platform, and what really started to bring you towards that.
Sure. It was about 10 years ago. Time really does fly. My uncle's wife at the time was diagnosed with breast cancer. And for our family, that was the first time that we really had anyone that ever was diagnosed, and especially being so close. And then, unfortunately, she lost her battle with breast cancer. So from that point, it just became something that it was a passion, because I saw how it impacted our family, but especially my uncle and my cousins, because, that's hard to see someone that you love, and you want to try to fight for them and do all that you can, but you come to a point where you can't. And then it just became like a domino effect. I started knowing other women, and they too lost their battle, and they were young. And that's the thing, they were young women. I know a young woman who was 32, a mother of two,
Wow.
a wife. And then, like I said, it's just been a pattern. And then 3 years ago, I met another amazing woman at a Komen race, because then I joined Komen about 6 years ago, became an ambassador. Because after that happened to my uncle's wife, I really wanted to get involved and, see what I could do to kind of give back. And it was kind of therapeutic for me as well. It was a chance for me to kind of grieve and, kind of work through my emotions about breast cancer. And so from that point on, I knew that I really wanted to take a stand and use my voice to see if I can try to help as many women as I can, because early detection is so important when it comes to breast cancer.
So it sounds like you're really, an advocate in this supportive role. And personally, as a breast cancer survivor, I know how important that is, to know that there was someone coming alongside of me that was fighting this battle with me. And so you're like in the trenches, you're in the foxhole with, as a voice and an advocate, to this horrible disease that is really, it's unfair. It's an unfair sorority that we get to be a part of whenever you have this diagnosis. But having someone like you that's so strong and courageous to come and just forge ahead as a supportive person, that's incredible. Tell me what you've already been doing.
It's been a busy last few months, but but it's been great, because I always say, as a title holder, the crown and sash is kind of like a megaphone. It really gets people's attention, and that's an opportunity that you take to network and spread awareness and get people's attention. And for me, I had the ability to partner with a number of nationally known breast cancer organizations, because that is one big piece of this is resources.
Yes.
I hear a lot of women, as you say, I put myself in the front line, and I hear we don't know what our resources are. We don't know where we can go. So by partnering with all these different organizations, I'm putting those resources out there, because some of these organizations do focus on research. Some focus on, if you're going through economic hard times, because you're out there, you've lived it. Treatment can be expensive. So we have organizations that help women, pay for those treatments. We have different organizations like Komen, American Cancer Society. All those different organizations do different things to help women get through this process.
I think that's such an important subject that you bring up. When I was going through my breast cancer battle, I read that I think it was some 80% of women filed bankruptcy after breast cancer. It can be devastating. It can be devastating, financially devastating.
Absolutely, and that's where also healthcare is another big piece to that. Another big factor that I hear a lot about. Depending on what your insurance can provide for you, what type of treatments you get. If you don't have the health insurance, and my goodness, then of course it can be even more costly. And even with health insurance, the medical bills can be very extensive. Which is another piece to it that is really difficult to hear, because personally I think, this is just my opinion, that everyone deserves to have health care, and everyone should be able to choose how they're going to save their life, and I think that's important.
And one of the things also is that whenever I went through breast cancer, I didn't know what resources were there for me. And my family, being that I was the first one ever to get cancer in my family, they didn't know what resources were out there. So someone like you just being an ambassador for families and those going through cancer, I personally can see that you bring up the portion about the finances, because when I was going through breast cancer, I read that I think some 80% of women filed bankruptcy after going through breast cancer treatment. And that is a lot. That is a huge statistic.
That is a huge statistic. Because it's so expensive. The treatments alone, and a lot of times you can't work. There's a lot of women who can't work. So if they're married, their husband's taking on, they're the breadwinner and trying to support the family. So that's really tough, which brings on even more stress. It's bad enough you're dealing with breast cancer, and now you're having to add on that financial stress as well. That's really tough.
I think it's so great that what you're doing, as an advocate for families who don't know what resources are out there. And so people can, if they have the privilege of getting to speak to you and everything that you're doing in the community, they can see all these things are already laid out. You've already done the footwork for people who may be entering into this crisis and this horrible disease.
Absolutely. And my biggest piece is, my platform is Treasure Your Chest. I just love that. If you can see, it's very passionate for me, and I even have a blog for it. So I wanted to have something, an outlet for people to actually go. So what it is every month, men and women, who've been impacted with breast cancer, share their story, so that all of my followers, anyone can actually see exactly what they're going through, because I don't think it's talked about enough. I feel like a lot of people lack that support system, so they get quiet. That's a lot to go through, emotionally. And I know for me, as a minority woman, I've talked to so many, women of color that have been through breast cancer. And the thing is, it's not talked about a lot in the communities. Underprivileged communities definitely get a downfall, because they're not getting the doctors, in those areas. And of course, they're not getting the treatments. They're not getting the knowledge. A simple conversation about your family, like, does it run in your family? It's just the educational piece. Before we even find the lump, I always say it's about the education. We need to be able to have open conversations like we're having, so that you can take that back to your family, sit down over dinner and talk about it, to protect yourself, but also to protect other people around you. That's important.
Do you believe that's why the statistic shows that there's a larger percentage of women in the colored community who do not survive breast cancer, because the lack of education?
I do. I think there's a couple different factors. One thing is, studies show, older women, Caucasian women, older women. That's not true. The majority of the women that I know personally were young. You were young.
Mm-hmm.
They're very young. They were under 40, in their early 30s. So a doctor may say, oh, you don't have breast cancer, you're too young. That's not true. Another factor is there's something that I learned at a web series that I actually heard was that one of the other issues is marketing. You don't see a lot of women of color, on marketing brochures for breast cancer, and that kind of deter you. If you don't see a woman of yourself or someone that looks like you in that position, you're thinking, well, you know what, that can't be me. But the reality is this disease does not discriminate. It can be any woman, it can be a man, it just does not discriminate. But we have to sit down and actually educate ourselves. And that's what I want to do. I want to be that person, that support system. Treasure Your Chest is a place that you can go. It's on my website. It's a place where you can go and get the education that you need. You can hear those personal stories, because ultimately I want to try to save as many lives as I can.
The reason I started this Rose-Colored Path podcast was because it was, going through cancer myself. I was finding the benefit and the positive of this horrible situation. And so losing your aunt and losing friends and having friends that have been sick, I see that in your life, this rose-colored path. Like, you have found a way to make something that was so tragic into something that provides you the ability to give back into your community. And so, if given the absolute privilege of winning that national title, tell me how you would spend your year.
Is when I actually was appointed this title, I wanted to treat it just like I was on that national title level. I feel as though that in order to know what that job is, you should do it. And that's the way I took it. So I did start by continuing to work with, nationally known organizations to cover that piece, to go out and do the research, to help with fundraising, because that's important. Social media is so big, especially this past year, because everybody's been entrapped at home. So I took full advantage of having a number of followers by starting that blog like I told you about, and really posting just different information about it, being a part of going to all these different virtual events that we have, because learning is key and being able to pass on that information. So I want to be able to continue to do that. And I even signed with a PR pageant firm, pageant relations. Wow. So that because they have so many different networking and different organizations and people that they work with, that can get me really out there on a national level continuously. Yes. So I'm very, very excited about that, because as you know, this is something that really impacts everyone, regardless if you're diagnosed or not. It's a domino effect, even down to the children. Yes. Everybody is impacted by breast cancer, and it just needs to be put on that national level.
Well, I have watched you with your state title, and I think that you would do amazing things as an ambassador with that national crown, and I just wish you the best of luck. And is there anything else you want to share with our listeners before we go?
I just think that because of both of us, and the type of people that we are, I always tell people to keep the faith. No matter whatever happens in your life, always keep the faith. Yes. And that's probably the biggest message that I would give anyone. That message is who I am as a person. So always keep the faith and never give up.
You are an amazing woman, not only beautiful, but so smart, and it is just such an honor to get to watch you on this journey, and I wish you the best of luck coming up in February when you go to San Antonio for Nationals.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, and I wish you all the best. This is amazing. You're going to help so many people, Candace.
Thank you. I hope so.